Hello and welcome to the 7th episode of my knitting podcast. For everybody who's new to this channel, a very warm welcome. It's so nice to have you here. For everybody who came back, thank you so much. It was so lovely to see all your comments again on my last episode. I still have to answer a few ones. I'm a bit late on that, but just a little hint for the giveaway. I still haven't got any reply, and I'm a bit worried because I don't want to, I know that the person who won might want to, I don't want them to lose out on it, but I will wait another episode and see if I get an answer from Mathilde. Otherwise I will have to draw a new winner. We will have to wait and see. At the moment I'm just waiting because as you might know, here in the UK it is a bit, at least there's a problem with the post going from the UK to Europe. So I can't send anything anyways at the moment. At least I don't think so. So I'll wait another episode, and then if I don't hear of Mathilde until the next episode, then I will draw a new winner. But yeah, this episode is... sorry, I just had a coffee. This episode is gonna be a bit different than the normal episodes, and so for everybody who's new to this channel, normally I talk about the my finished objects. I talk about my projects that I'm working on. I also usually include patterns and designers that inspire me. But this time it's going to be a bit different. So this time it is going to be a recap of 2020 and why knitting saved my 2020. So just a very brief introduction of myself. I know sometimes I get new viewers every video, so I just want to introduce myself very briefly. My name is Anastasia. I am 28 years old, turning 29 very soon, and I am originally from Germany, but I have been living in the UK now for 1.5 years. And I actually discovered my passion for knitting when I was living in Iceland prior to that. And that is why you see a lot of Icelandic wool and Icelandic style knitting on this channel. I had a few comments regarding my accent. Very nice comments. I'm not offended at all if you say anything about my accent. God, I know it is a bit weird. My accent might be a bit weird because back in the days in school I wasn't really good in English. I had average marks, but English was never really my favorite language. I did an exchange year in Quebec, which is the French part of Canada, and I learned speaking. Well, I spoke French fluent. I was very good in French. And then my mother, she's from Chile, so I learned to speak Spanish at home. And I was always better in Spanish and French than in English. And then I started flying, or I went to flight school, and I did part of my flight school in America. So I guess I sort of maybe picked up a bit of an American accent. And then when I moved to Iceland, I think I probably also picked up a bit of an Icelandic English accent, because obviously when you spend a lot of time speaking with other people English that have an accent, you probably pick up a bit of their accent as well. And then I ended up with an English boyfriend, and he's from he's from the northern part of England, so that is a very different accent again. So yeah, it's just a whole mess. I'm still trying to get rid of my German accent, so yeah, I'm working hard on that. We watch a lot of like English TV or English movies, and I'm making an effort to not watch it with subtitles and really, yeah, to get really better in that, but that is why my accent is a bit weird. And even though I don't really like hearing my own accent, I really like hearing other accents. So when I meet people from other background, I love hearing the different tones in the accent. So I think, well, hopefully it's a nice addition. I don't know. To start with that video, I thought I'd start with the year, well, at the beginning of the year. So I've been knitting prior to 2020, and I was mainly knitting lopper pacers, so Icelandic style sweaters, or Icelandic sweaters. Actually, lopper pacers are Icelandic sweaters, but they have changed the way of being able to name them now. So now if you don't knit them in Iceland out of unspun Icelandic wool, you can't call them lopper pacers. And that is mainly to protect their own hand knitting business. So the sweater that I'm wearing now, that would be called an Icelandic style sweater. So I've been mainly knitting that sort of style, always like with a sort of pattern around the yoke, and yeah. And then at the beginning of this year, I was listening to an audio podcast from it's a German audio podcast that I listen to on Spotify. It's called Wollinspiration. And she was Kaya. She was talking about the sock madness. So I got very curious, and I had to look into it. And so the sock madness is a sort of sock knitting competition. If you want to know more about it, I will link it down in the description box. So if you click on the title of this video, you will be able to find the show notes, and I will link the Ravelry group. So that all takes place on Ravelry, and it's a sock knitting competition. I don't know if I said it already. It is a competition, obviously, but it's also sort of a social event, because you get to speak with or talk on Ravelry, write with knitters from all over the world, with all very different backgrounds. So that was very, very nice and interesting. And before that, I've never really knit that much with other wool than Icelandic wool. And then for that competition, I decided to order some sock yarn, and it was the first time that I ordered some hand-dyed yarn. So yeah, I really discovered a whole new niche of knitting for myself. I passed the qualifying round, so I think in the qualifying round you have to knit a pair of socks within, I think, 2 weeks, and it's a certain pair of socks after a pattern that you get access to, but you have to knit it exactly like the pattern describes it, so you can't do any modifications unless they are allowed. So I passed the qualifying round, and I got into a team that was like sort of a good mix. I think some were super fast knitters in our team, some were a bit slower like me. And I made it to round 3, and then in round 3 I think I didn't have time to really continue knitting, but I was still following it up and I was still reading the comments and the chatter in the Ravelry group. And yeah, in total I knitted 4 socks during that Sock Madness competition. I will include, I think I'll include a few pictures here. So the first one in the qualifying round was a Wohin socks by a Caoua Coffee, I think. That was quite a difficult pattern for me at that time. Unfortunately the socks ended up a bit small, but I gave them away to my niece and she really loves them, so that's perfect. In the second round I knitted a sock called, or the sock pattern was the Diamond Duality by Liz Harris. That is a colorwork pattern, so 2 colors, and I found that really like difficult because normally with Icelandic wool, at least, because the wool that you use is so, well, the Icelandic wool is got long fibers, so it's very easy, I find, or much easier to knit colorwork. But with sock yarn I found it super hard, and especially in the small circumference I found it hard to have the right tension. So that was certainly a project that took a lot of concentration, but I learned a lot and I really the result is really nice as well. The third sock that I knit there was then the Braidalots by Dabbles. They were really nice as well. They have 2 Latvian, braids, Latvian braids, and a bit of color work, and then also some cables. So there was a lot going on in this sock, and it was quite you had to be very, very careful to get it right, to get the braids in the right direction. So that was a really, really nice pattern. I really enjoyed knitting that one, and I still think I should knit another one. I gave these ones to my sister, to my older sister. And then the third round, and that is where I stalled, where I didn't make it in the time. I knitted the Lacy, Not Lazy by Imawale, and they were my favorite socks. I think they are super, super beautiful. I still wear them from time to time. They're sort of my couch socks, so when it's cold I sit here and wear them, and they're my favorite ones. So in total I knitted 4 socks during that Sock Madness. Obviously I think there were another 4 rounds. I think I'm lying there. I don't really know how many rounds there were in total. But I was very, very impressed. I think at the end, the last 2 socks, I think they were completed within, I think, 12 hours or 14 hours. So I was very, very impressed by the speed of some knitters. And I am looking forward to participating in that again. Yeah, and that was sort of then, during springtime I've been knitting a lot of socks, and then I had the idea of this knitting podcast, and I think I posted the first episode in July, so that's 5 months ago. But obviously I had the idea quite a much longer time, and what I wanted to tell you about is how I came to the name Free Your Sheep, because it's a bit of a weird name, or I don't know, weird, nice. I like the name, otherwise I wouldn't have picked it. The idea came from it was from an event. My partner and I, we were home, and where we lived before, there was a sort of a big field behind the house where we're living in, and there were a lot of sheep on that field. And we went for a walk, and we could hear one of the sheep was like screaming very, very loudly, and we were wondering why it was screaming. So I had a look, and I saw there was a fox on the field, which was a bit weird because it was in the middle of the day, and so normally the foxes, you don't really see them in the middle of the day in the middle of a field. And we had a proper look then, because this sheep wouldn't stop screaming. And then we realized that the sheep was caught in like a blueberry bush. So basically it was grazing next to the fence, and got caught with the wool in a blueberry bush. And it was panicking because obviously I think it was afraid of the fox, and the fox probably knew that the sheep was sort of caught, and so the fox ran away, and we thought, oh, we will try to free that sheep, because we never really saw the farmer there. I think the farmer just put the sheep on the field there, and then they were there for, I don't know, weeks on their own, or they would probably pass by every couple of days. But yeah, we didn't know the farmers, and we didn't know how to call them, so we thought, oh, we're gonna just free the sheep, and that is where the name came from. So yeah, we went back home and got some garden scissors, and freed the sheep. It was very, very happy. I think it was very hungry, and so it ran away straight off, had a good feed afterwards. But and then obviously free your sheep is also a way of, by using the wool, we're freeing the sheep of the wool. So this is sort of where the name came from. And then, in July, I then started my knitting podcast. And from then onwards, you probably know, if you've followed me up from then, you have seen that I've been knitting quite different projects. So I've been knitting garments, sweaters, cardigans, summer t-shirts. I've been knitting toys, or actually crocheting toys. So I've done a bit of crochet as well, and all the other things. In total, I made a bit of a calculation. So in total, I knitted over 5 kilograms of wool, and I have that were 12,500 meters, so 12.5 kilometers of wool that I've knitted in this year. It's quite a bit, I find. I finished a total of 25 projects, and I've only got, I think, 2 projects that I'm still working on, so that's quite good. I'm starting the year fairly fresh. I think I'll probably be able to finish one of them. So this is the one I've got here. I showed it in one of my last episodes. So this is the Milk Bun Poof by Life is Cozy. So I'm probably gonna finish that during the next days. And then I've got another project on my needles, but that is like a sort of long-term project, so that can wait. That can come with me to the next year. I won't mind that. And yeah, so a total of 26 finished objects, of which 7 were Testknits, and that's also a new thing that I learned this year. So I really got into test knitting. I found it a super nice way to first of all try different patterns, because normally I always go for like same style of garments, or I used to, but with the test knits I really like tried new techniques. I tried new sort of garments. So for example, if you remember, in summertime I knitted the, I think it was called the Chianti top. That was a very, very nice summer top, that, or a different style that I knitted. Let me have a look. Yeah, so the Chianti top by Zen of Knitting, that was one of my favorite summer knits. And then I also tried different techniques. For example, the Amaruk sweater. That is a sweater by Locatelli. That was one of my highlights as well. One of my favorite knits as well. By the end of the garment, I have just finished the Lithium sweater by Lily Kate France. So I will show you that one in the next episode. And yeah, so test knitting, just to talk about very briefly about that, and why I got into that. I really enjoyed, first of all, trying different patterns, as I said, but then also being able, so normally you don't really interact that much with the designers, but when you're a test knitter, mostly the designers will explain a bit more what the idea behind the garment is, and I really enjoy that. So you get to understand what the process behind the sizing is, you get to understand a bit more about the inspiration sometimes, and I really enjoyed that, and I learned so much about that. So if you are interested in test knitting, just if you follow a few designers on Instagram, you will see a lot of them will advertise there. There's also a test knitters group on Ravelry, and this is how I really got into it. I think my first test knit, I did it on Ravelry, and I can only recommend, if you don't mind knitting with a deadline. I know some people don't like having a deadline. I personally don't mind it, as long as it's realistic. So some test knits where I really was under pressure, but if it's realistic, I think a test knit is such a great experience, and you get to like talk to other test knitters depending on which platform the designers are using. But yeah, I've had really fun test knits. The last one that I did now with Lily Kate France was so much fun, and it was so nice. There were so nice knitters who were test knitting as well. So yeah, I can only recommend, if you don't mind a deadline. And if you don't, I think as a test knitter you have to be careful to not change the pattern too much, because you're supposed to be testing the pattern how it is written in the description. So it's not really a place to make too many modifications. But well, if you don't mind that, I think it's a great experience. Yeah, and then from the finished objects, I made a little list, because I can't remember that. So in total I made 6 cardigans or sweaters, of which one was a baby cardigan, so it doesn't really count. And then I made 8 pairs of socks, which is quite a lot for me, considering I don't find that I'm a sock knitter. But obviously with the sock madness, there were already 4 pairs of socks. And And then I did a few accessories, so I made the 2 hats, I think, or 3 hats, the wedding garter for my sister, I made a huge baby blanket in the beginning of this year, and yeah, that's about it really. I sticked in a total of 3 sweaters, so and 1 sweater, the Amarouk sweater, I sticked it 3 times. And that is also another thing that I really enjoyed this year. So learning new techniques, and once again, a lot of these new techniques were due to Testknits. But yeah, don't be afraid of learning new techniques every time you pick a pattern. I can recommend that if you have a bit of experience knitting, just pick a pattern every time that just teach you at least 1 new technique. So don't be afraid. I think mostly as a new knitter you might be a bit worried about too many new techniques, but I have to say, if you struggle with the technique, there are so many good tutorials on YouTube. So just search for the exact term, like, let's say a simple one, knit 2 together. Just put in YouTube K2 together, DOG, and you will find very good tutorials of different people. And that's the way I learned most of the techniques. And then when it comes to steeking, don't be afraid as well. I think steeking is such a great technique to really get your garments onto a new level. And if you don't like sweaters necessarily, like I prefer a cardigan, I think, than a sweater, depending on which one. But I think steeking is really a great way, because then you can still knit in a round, but then at the end you can completely change your garment and give it a new look. And yeah, have a try, don't be afraid. It is a really cool way of getting your knitting to a next level. Yeah, and then, well, I'm not going to talk about all the different projects that I knitted on in the last months, because you've been following that and I don't want to bore you to death. But then I finished this year with my first ever own design, and I have to say it's a bit of a fail, but only sizing wise, I think. So yeah, I haven't talked about it yet, but here that's what I'm wearing. So this is my first design that I made myself. I talked about it in the last episode when I was showing it to you. So this is the sweater that I designed for my partner. He loves fishing and he wanted to have a fishing sweater with fishes on. So I had a look at some other sweaters that I've knitted before, and I had a look at the gauge, and I decided on a stitch count, and I designed the whole thing. So it worked out really well in this size, but unfortunately the size doesn't fit my partner, and I'm still trying to figure out why it is. I reckon I have to double check, but I think my gauge has changed from, I checked it with the garment that I knitted 2 years ago, and I think my gauge has changed so significantly that I have to re-knit the whole thing. Unfortunately, but I just want to show it to you a bit. So this is like a sort of maritime style sweater. I decided to go with waves and fishes, as you can see here, and then I added some mountains in the yoke part, and then I went back into the blue. So I designed the whole charts. I did that all myself. I came up with it. So I first had a I paint, or I draw the way I wanted to have the sweater to look like, and then I used what is it called? Graph paper. Yeah, I used graph paper to then come up with the stitch, with the charts. It took me quite some time to really get the decreases in the pattern as well. Not very easy, especially when you do lots of mistakes, but I managed to come up with this. So I finished that one just 2 days before his birthday, and I was so looking forward to finally give it to him. And he saw that I was knitting on it, and he was so looking forward to wearing it. And then on his birthday he tried it on, and it was an absolute disaster. I mean, everything was too small, it was too short, the sleeves were too short, everything was a bit too tight, and I mean, I completely got the right size wrong. So I will knit another one, and that means I will keep that one probably for myself. I don't know, I didn't really think I would like it that much on myself, but actually now that I see it through the camera, I actually quite like it. I really like the waves motif. I think I did another one for my sister where I changed, that was actually after a sweater design from a designer, I think. I'm not too sure which one it was, but I changed just the charts in her sweater to these waves that I came up with myself. But this time, yeah, I completely did the whole thing myself. So the size of the decreases and everything. That was a highlight of this year. I don't know if it's a good one or bad one, but I finished this knitting year with this project. Not really, I did a few, I just finished the Rhythm sweater as well, but this is sort of my knitting highlight for this year. And next year I have a few more projects that I have in plan, but I will talk about it in my next video. But I would like to know from you, so what were your highlights knitting related in 2020? And it would be so nice to see your pictures. So if you want to, maybe if you want to share them on Instagram, it's the easiest way to see them. Otherwise, I will open a thread on my Ravelry group. Over there, I will open a thread so you can show your finished object of 2020, so I can have a look and get inspired, and other people can be inspired. And I will also open another thread for the plant projects that you have in 2021. I think that would be nice to see as well. Also, if you had the time and you had a look, if you want to tell me how much you have knitted, but I really, I mean, I'm not that numbers obsessed, and it's not a competition, God no, I'm not in that way, but it would be nice to see how much you have knitted. I think I'm probably like in an average. It's not horrendously much, but certainly also not little. With 26 finished objects, I'm quite pleased. I didn't actually think that it would be that many, but obviously like little projects like hats and baby stuff, like baby garments, they don't take that long, so do they count? I don't know. So this is the end of this episode. Thank you so much for your support during the last months. It's been absolutely amazing to have you here. And I really hope that you have a great start into the new year, that it brings you a lot of joy, a lot of fun, health, and lots of time for knitting. Please let me know if you like the new setup, and I hope to see you very soon in the new year. So take care and bye bye.